Thank you. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
This is always the awkward bit. Also on Zoom, because nobody wants to speak. That's also fair.
Faye, do you have a question?
It's not really a question, it's more of just some comments. I thought that was brilliant. I thought it took me right back to primary school, and how, you know, children with dyspraxia, we do feel singled out. And I think your kind of metaphor with the pencil, both literal and metaphorical, just is like the epitome of what, you know, we all feel sometimes. That why is the system so the way it is, so that children on the spectrum do feel like, oh, we're not at those milestones, we're not quite there yet. So I just wanted to say that I thought that was brilliant, and I think you've captured every part of certainly a part of me, and I'm sure a part of other people as well. Like, absolutely phenomenal job. Well done.
Thanks, Faye. It's very lovely. Thank you.
So we've got a couple of questions in this chat. One says, how did it feel to write this book?
Oh, yeah. It was really tricky, actually. I mean, I felt incredibly lucky, and I was very grateful that I got a book deal and I was getting paid to write it. But yeah, I'm glad that I was, because in doing the show, so I wrote the show before I wrote the book, and writing the show, you know, I had to get up every day. I had to join the Fringe. You perform every day for a month in August, and during that time, you know, I had to relive, you know, I told the story a couple of times, well, every day, and there were always bits that I found like quite emotional. And so when I was writing the book, I thought, oh, you know, it's going to be similar. But actually, I get, well, because I'm also dyslexic, it sort of brought up all sorts of sabotage thoughts. But the process was amazing, and I was really lucky. I think the key was that I had incredible editors. I sent, you know, 2 chapters a month. I wrote, you know, I wrote in 6 months, and so I sent 2 chapters a month to them, and they were amazing and really helped me. And yeah, it was great. And it's funny reading it back, because I think part of I have quite poor working memory, or like I don't really remember. I remember the process of writing it, I remember the stories, but I don't really remember the way that I wrote it. So it's always quite funny to read it back, and sort of sometimes it feels like, oh God, did I write that? But yeah, it was good fun and very difficult in sort of equal measures, but you know, worth doing.
Tim's got his hand up, so Tim, would you like to ask your question on video?
Yes, please. That's the good. Hi, it's nice to see you again. Are you going to start writing any more shows?
More shows? Well, I don't know. It's obviously theatre and comedy isn't really the place to be at the moment, unfortunately. I had hoped to do the show version. Everything is going to be KO again with the book release, because we had always talked about doing a bit of a national tour with it, because obviously it was quite a regional based book, but that obviously didn't quite work out. I'm still doing I'm writing other stuff. They're not shows at the moment. I'm writing another book, this time fiction, and I've written a film about something else, both things about something else altogether. So I am writing. There will be other stuff, but no, I've got one show in the works, but it's probably going to be a while, just because of the current climate. Try to find ways of making work that people can see safely is really important. And yeah, unfortunately, theatre and comedy is a little bit trickier to navigate at the moment.
We've got another question. How do you think dyspraxia impacts you as an adult compared to a child?
I think in some ways, as a kid, it was because I didn't know about my diagnosis, it was much easier to sort of push things aside and sort of not make a big deal out of them, in the sense of, oh, she's just clumsy, or she's just a bit ditzy or a bit all over the place. And in some ways, I think that it sort of became a part of my personality as a child, or at least the way that people perceived me. It was part of my personality. Whereas, you know, having my diagnosis and talking to people about it, and my friends having read the book, and I think it's really interesting that, you know, while all of those traits are still there, I don't think that I'm really, you know, my friends wouldn't call me clumsy, and they wouldn't call me ditzy or anything like that. I think because obviously I'm so much more than that. And yeah, so I think in some ways having the diagnosis has allowed me to be able to understand it better. And yeah, and I guess also the most important thing is, as an adult, I get to decide what my life looks like. I'm in charge of, you know, what sort of work I want to do. I'm in charge of what I want my day to look like and the activities I want to do. And so largely, like, all the stuff that I found very difficult was sort of related to having to go to school every day and having to have my life constrained to this little world, which was didn't really suit me. Whereas now, as an adult, like, the most amazing thing is that I get to, if I don't want to work in an office, I don't, so I don't, you know. And I think it's easier to create my own to give myself the things that I need, which, you know, as a child I didn't know what to ask for because I didn't know what I needed. And you know, hopefully, and I think I'm getting better and better at that as I get older. And I think that that's one of the best things about aging, is being able to start realizing, oh well, actually, you know, I don't, that's really unhelpful to me. Or you know, like, I've always been really organized, because if I'm not, everything falls apart. And you know, that being organized as an adult, I can really realize, like, why I do that and how I do it, and it makes me feel very good and in charge and safe, in a way that as a kid that wasn't really possible.
The other question we have is, what was your biggest challenge growing up with dyspraxia?
I think so with all of this, I know I said it before, like, my profile is made up of lots of different things, so it's really hard to say, like, what's, you know, which bit's dyspraxia and what's dyslexia and what's all this other stuff. I think and it's also really hard to distinguish what parts of those things are SpLDs and what parts of me are just like my personality. I think the things I really struggled with was I'm really good at understanding, you know, when I'm very good at like, if I know what the rules are, I can do the rules. So, like, in school, I really struggled with doing well in exam settings. I needed a lot of provision. I needed extra time. I needed all the stuff which I didn't get. I think I think the biggest challenge growing up with it was just that I hadn't got the things hadn't been put in place for me to be able to flourish to my full extent, and that was very disheartening, because I found I think it's really difficult to rebuild that confidence of when you're trying your best and you're not achieving as well as you know you can. And I think I've had to do a lot of work as an adult afterwards to appreciate that, like, it wasn't that I was bad, it was just that it was unfair and that I wasn't getting the help that I needed. So I think a lot of it's like, as it I think always is, like, well, like, confidence and the sort of emotional impact is much greater than the, you know, the manifestations of it, maybe. Anyway, that's my experience.
And I read your chapter before where you say that you also grew up in South Africa and America. Did you prefer the education over there, or was it like completely varied, so like your different educational experiences from where you lived?
Yeah, they were completely varied, because in South Africa, my parents always really wanted to send me to, like, alternative schooling. They always, just because of who they are, they're like hippies. They, you know, wanted to send me to a Montessori, which is what I went to in South Africa. So I went to a very, like, hippie bippy, like, you know, you're doing your letters in sand and you're making cakes. You're not really doing too much in terms of like learning, and you don't sort of do a lot of that stuff until you're about 6. And then I went to America, and in America you're in school from like 4, and it's much more academically driven, and so I was really behind. But you know, they also were incredible. I had a lot of one-to-one support, and I'm sure if I hadn't have had that, I think that really put me on a really great path for when I went to the UK and was in very underfunded state schools, in which like the schools were overcrowded and there was no way that they were going to pick up any SpLDs that I had. I think that was largely because of the support that I got in America. Yeah, and then, you know, living in Yorkshire, there wasn't any much, and my parents didn't have the money for the alternative education then. So yeah, I've been very lucky to have experienced a lot of different, a lot of very different educational worlds, you know, all the way through until, you know, my drama school and all that sort of stuff. It was all very like varied and different.
What led you to getting a diagnosis, you or your parents, and what pathway did you access, NHS or ...
So when I was doing my mods, which are like what Oxford call your first year exams, I failed. I failed one, which I basically wrote. It was an exam where I had to write something. They gave me a passage in English and I had to translate it into ancient Greek, which is a stupid thing to ask anyone to do anyway. And I failed it, and I failed it so badly, and I'd done loads and loads of work for it. And I think what I'd done is that I wrote it in the wrong language, but obviously I didn't think that I was writing in the wrong language. And from that, like my tutor at Oxford had sort of picked up quite a lot of things that she saw as dyslexic traits in my writing and in my because I did classics, so I learned Latin and ancient Greek from scratch while I was at Oxford, and my Latin and ancient Greek was really, really dyslexic in the sense of like I was having trouble learning the alphabet, I was flipping the letters, so things that you might not have been able to notice in my English, but in learning another language and specifically with a different alphabet was really, really obvious. And so I was very lucky because Oxford has a lot of people who have SpLDs, and a lot of them get diagnosed while at the university. I think, you know, that's a really important and like much overlooked thing about SpLDs is obviously that you can be incredibly high achieving or very academic or very smart. And so Oxford is their access and their sort of disability advisory service are incredible. And so they were the ones who got me, and they paid for it all. And then I had the support for the rest of my degree. And I think lots of universities are pretty good at that. And the one thing that I would really recommend, so my mum went to university as a mature student, she did her MA, and she got diagnosed with dyslexia, no dyspraxia, I don't think, but through the university. So I think, you know, it's something that I would always really recommend if you've got an institutional support. Like if there's institutional support, get it, because doing it on your own is really tricky, and I'll be forever grateful for the help that I got there, and it makes a big difference. And I now know I'm much better at asking for the help in my adult life, in terms of, you know, if I'm applying for funding through Arts Council or applying for grants and stuff, I'm very good at, I'm much better anyway at asking for the help, because people do want to give you it, or, you know, demand it, and they'll if they haven't thought about it before, they should be thinking about it now. So yeah, sorry, that was slight diatribe.
And if you were given a chance to express your feelings to your family as a child, how would you ask them to support you?
I think this is a really, really tricky one. I think this is a really tricky one because my diagnosis ended up leading to my brother's diagnosis, my dad's diagnosis, and my mum's diagnosis. So you know, it's a hereditary experience. And, you know, I think, you know, when I first got sat down in Oxford and they said, oh, we think you're dyslexic, and I called up my parents and I sort of said, oh, well, this is what, you know, these are the things that they think are dyslexia and dyspraxia. Well, I didn't know about dyspraxia until I got the actual diagnosis, but when I read them back, especially when I got the report, my parents were like, oh, well, that's our experience. So there was no way that they would ever pick it up, because why would they think it was out of the ordinary, because that's their experience. And so, you know, I think, you know, my family were as supportive, and they did everything they possibly could to support me in my education and emotionally and all those sort of things. And they were really, really wonderful. And so, like, I'm not really sure I could have said anything apart from, you know, like, get me tested, because maybe that would have changed everything for them earlier on as well. But I don't know, I think maybe it had to happen the way that it did. Yeah, I mean, they supported me incredibly. And I think, you know, if you read the rest of the book, I think it's a little bit it's clearer in terms of, you know, what it meant for my family and what it meant for me, both the diagnosis of SpLDs and also like going to Oxford or doing the things that I do now. Like, it's all connected. Yeah.
Thank you. You've got a few, not necessarily questions, but a few people who would like to work with you.
That's very lovely. Yeah, follow me on Twitter, and if I ever have any call out, I tend to, if I'm looking for things, I always do a call out on social media. I mean, nothing, again, because of Corona, nothing's in the works yet, but always looking for people to collaborate with. So if you on Twitter or Instagram, yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. And then when the time comes, which I hope will be soon, we'll be able to do some cool stuff.
Thank you. So that's the end of the event, if no one else has any more questions. And thank you for joining us today, and for reading from your book and sharing your experiences. We do have an evaluation form for people to complete if you can. It's just in the chat. Louise has posted it, and there's also our website and our Just Given page, and also the link to our Zoom making workshop on Saturday, and also a link to where you can buy the book from. And I've got a copy here.
Oh, thanks so much. Also, I read the audiobook, so if you enjoyed me reading it, you can also listen to me, and that's on Amazon. If you know, I prefer the Hive link because that's independent booksellers, but you can also buy it on Amazon / the audiobook. I think it's on Audible as well. So
thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jess, and thanks, Louise.